Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another sketch and review. This time is for the latest entry in one of my favorite ongoing franchises, Resident Evil. Right about now is where I'd say if you haven't yet, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps a lot and gives me that dopamine rush to keep doing these sketch and reviews. So let's get into it. First up for this drawing, I wanted to get both Leon and Grace together fighting off a group of zombies climbing up some rubble in kind of a last stand scenario. The total time for the drawing was about 2 hours, so if it seems messy, that's why. For my finer art pieces, you can check out my other videos, but for these sketch and reviews, I tend to just sort of wing it. I sped it up, obviously, since I didn't want the video to run for 2 hours, but you get the point. And yeah, I cut some of the fuck-ups in the drawing, so if a line suddenly changes or a small section of shading jumps, that's why. I don't have time to keep all the bullshit. Though, I did leave some mistakes, so you can still see when I fuck up because that's part of creating art. Fucking up until you get it right. And if you hear barking in the background, that's my 6-month-old puppy Ariel, which I'm sure some people have seen in my shorts that tend to do better than these long-form videos. But anyway, getting back to it. After how disappointed I was by Silent Hill F, oh man, I really had high hopes for that game. I'm glad to say that Resident Evil Requiem far exceeded my expectations. Now, in order to understand this game, you kinda need to go back to the beginning. I'm actually surprised how many people I've seen say that this is their first Resident Evil. See, games like 4, 7, and Village kind of work as standalones. You could play those without knowing almost anything about the series and not be lost. Requiem, though, hangs a lot on the past. In fact, I'd say this feels like an actual Part 4 more than any other game in the series. And not just story-wise, but in tone, pacing, and gameplay. So much of it goes back to the series' roots, much like how 7 did, only even more so here. On a side note, as much as I love Resident Evil 4, I always felt like that one was more of a disconnected side story, since it had nothing to do with or had any effect on the main storyline. While Code Veronica should have been called Resident Evil 4, but I digress. Requiem picks up about 28 to 30 years later. 28 years later. After the events of Resident Evil 3. At the end of 3, which sees OG series veteran Jill Valentine escape Raccoon City, a missile strike hits downtown with the assumption that Umbrella was trying to destroy evidence of the outbreak. At the end of the original game, it looked like all of Raccoon City was nuked, but apparently it was just a small section. I've noticed games and movies have been doing that thing where something you thought was completely destroyed somehow survived. Alien Romulus did it with a Nostromo. Aliens Colonial Marines did it with Hadley's Hope. Rise of Skywalker did it too by having the Death Star throne room conveniently crashed into a planet. Apparently nothing gets completely annihilated anymore. Well, same goes for Raccoon City. Somehow, it's still standing. Yep, and somehow, Palpatine's back. The game starts you off as Grace Ashcroft, a stuttering but adorable and probably autistic like my wife, I love her, I'm allowed to say that, FBI agent, that's the, spoiler alert, adopted daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft, a reporter from Resident Evil Outbreak. Never played Outbreak? Too bad. This game doesn't care if you've never played any Resident Evil title. That's one thing I appreciate about it, is that it doesn't recap shit. It really does feel like it was made for longtime fans without needlessly explaining everything to newcomers. Want to know the whole story? Read a wiki, or buy the whole series on whatever system you have. Seriously, every single Resident Evil game is on all current-gen systems. There's really no excuse. Anyway, Grace is tasked with investigating a series of murders linked to the last survivors of Raccoon City. She's sent alone to a crime scene.
Sorry,
yes,
officer.
Alone, which makes no sense, but let's go with it. And things go south fast. Man, if only she was sent with a team. Well,
Are you okay?
without giving away too much, she's eventually thrust into a sweat-inducing, she sweats a lot, like a lot, situation that survival horror fans since the 90s know all too well. Playing as Grace, takes up about the first half of the game. It's a slow burn, puzzle-heavy approach where every bullet counts, just like the original games, and 7. Doors are locked with specific items like gems or other trinkets. Zombies are sparse at first, as is ammo, and she only has access to a piss-poor 9mm, Leon's one-shot Requiem revolver, and eventually her own, which is actually a halfway decent 9mm too. The game can be played from either first or third person mode. While both look great, seriously, the graphics and performance are top notch, which I'll get into, I opted to play in third person. Now, I know the consensus is that first person is scarier, but let me explain something. As much as I love this game, the first person camera sucks. It feels way too loose when looking and aiming. For example, her head will turn before her body does, and it just makes the game and aiming feel clunky. While it does emulate a more realistic type of movement, it doesn't work for making split decisions, which this game requires. Third person just feels better here. And don't get me wrong, I love first person shooters. Requiem doesn't feel as tight as 7 or Village, though, in their first person approach. Also, the scare factor. I've said this before. Horror movies and horror games don't scare me. It's got nothing to do with me being a tough guy. It's everything to do with what I've actually gone through. Which is kind of funny that Grace's section takes place in a clinic, since I used to work at a psych facility, and that was scarier than anything in any video game or movie, including this one. Another thing games and movies never acknowledge with horror is the smell. I work at a hospital. I've smelled open wounds, rot, and oh god, sepsis alerts. I have no problem with gruesome visuals or bug-eyed monsters. It's the smell that gets me. It'd be nice if for once a game or movie could acknowledge how bad gore really smells. I think, oh god, let me think about it. I think only Ethan in 7 said something about how bad the kitchen stinks when you enter the house for the first time in that game. So, for those of you without any deep-seated real-world trauma, which is probably like 3 of you, maybe the game is scary, but I'm the wrong person to say if something is scary or not, and I'll admit that. I actually seek out the most terrifying stuff to relax. Yes, I relax to blood, gore, and violence. Hey, so in my case, I judge stuff by how gruesome and violent it is, and Requiem totally fills that itch. Kind of like the original Manhunt on the PS2. I wish they'd remake or remaster that game. Man, the plastic bag execution still makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. I love Manhunt. Manhunt 2 was horribly censored, though. My god, that was a shame, though. Could have been great. So yeah, I just stuck with third person for the whole game. Plus, Grace stumbles, trips, and falls in third person, making her movement and tension more realistic. She doesn't do that in first person. First person is more for the feeling of claustrophobia, not knowing what's behind you. Third person gives you a bigger POV. But again, there's a little bit more realistic and better body movement, I feel, in third person. Now, the layout of Grace's section also reminded me more of the mansion from the first Resident Evil game than anything this series has thrown at us since. Really, it was like I was a kid again, playing this series for the first time. A nice touch fans of the first remake will also remember is that they brought back the Crimson Heads. Oh man, I can hear it now. These are random zombies that will come back more powerful than before if you don't dispose of their bodies right away. Whereas in the first remake, you had to set corpses on fire or later face them after they mutate. Here, you're given the choice to make viral injectors. The thing is, the game doesn't tell you which corpses will turn, and you'll never have enough injectors to get rid of them all. Some people hated the Crimson Heads, but I thought it was a great way to keep the tension going, honestly. In this case, it's exactly the same. It's just another way Requiem returned to the series' roots. Also, Grace as a character was refreshing. Finally, we have someone that shows fear, isn't a complete girl boss, but grows throughout the game and overcomes the odds. See, that's how you do a great female character nowadays. Plus, she's easy on the eyes. But not in a gratuitous way, so hold on. I'm okay with her not being another femme fatale like Ada. It brings a good balance to the series, because now we can go back to having a super sleek, sexy female character for the next game, and sites like IGN, Polygon, and Kotaku can't say shit. Who am I kidding? They always find a reason to complain about sexy female characters, but you know what they never complain about? Leon S. Kennedy. Daddy Leon. One-liner Leon.
Excuse me.
Sexy is okay, but only if it's Leon. Okay, I'll stop. Lusting after Leon. The second half of Requiem is pure adrenaline-fueled macho male power fantasy, and it is fucking glorious. Longtime femcel gooner poster boy for armchair gamer girls, Leon Kennedy is back. He's older, he's wiser, he's still full of witty one-liners, and he's not afraid to use them. Whereas Grace was a throwback to the Resident Evil of old, Leon is the push to where the series has been headed. A rough, on-your-toes blend of action and horror that's less slow-burn, scary, and more high-tension, heart-pounding, pant-shitting fight for survival. If Grace was Night of the Living Dead, Leon is Dawn of the Dead, and if you're too young to know what I'm talking about, fuck you, this is Resident Evil, baby, and we've been here for over 30 years. Sorry, I got a little too excited there. So yeah, Leon's section is very action-heavy, but not to the point of, say, Resident Evil 4 or 5 or even 6. And I'm sorry, I'm going to defend 6. I'm playing through it co-op with my wife since she wanted to get in on the Resident Evil action since I got Requiem. And it's not as bad as I remember everyone saying. Hell, I even liked it when it came out. Is it scary? No, not in the fucking slightest. But what did I say about scary earlier? Yeah, exactly. It's fun. If you can get around the whole running at, breakneck speed the entire time. Kind of surprised how fast it is for a Resident Evil game. Anyway, Leon's half in Requiem is actually the least action-packed of all the games he's been in, surprisingly enough. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, compared to the original 2, yes, the original 2 remake, 4 and 6, this one, in his sections, felt kind of sparse. Which makes sense considering he returns to a desolate ghost town of Raccoon City. It's dark, dirty, overcast with dust and grime, and there's shambling corpses of creatures that share but a small remnant of their lost humanity. Kind of like modern-day Portland. My only complaint, and really it's more of a nitpick, is the return to RPD, the main location where Resident Evil 2 took place. Newcomers might not get why it holds so much meaning or why us lifelong fans get hit with severe nostalgia. I grew up with this series, like I said. I remember playing in this area when I was a kid. Now as an adult, seeing the rundown remains kind of hits like seeing a childhood home destroyed if that childhood home was overrun with flesh-eating tweakers. The problem with the Raccoon Police Department section was that aside from the nostalgia bait, it felt kind of wasted. The one remaining police officer roaming the hall was eerie, I'll give it that. And honestly, it was probably the most emotional thing I've seen in this series. It's very brief, but it hits hard. Even in death, this last cop was staying on duty. There's hints throughout the game too that some of the infected retain some of their old memories, since they say stuff like, "No," and "Stop, help me." It's kind of unnerving and plays into a major plot point dealing with blood and memory. And Leon's reaction to the cop in the halls kind of gets you. It kind of gets you. So I won't spoil the rest. But only thing I'll say plot-wise, what they did with Oswald Spencer and a major decision he makes kind of contradicts his final moments in Resident Evil 5 before Wesker kills him. I'm just going to chalk it up to maybe he got dementia when the first outbreak started, because it kind of doesn't make sense here. He's evil, then he has a change of heart, then he's evil again. Yeah, they kind of need to explain it better, since the parts with Spencer are supposed to take place before Resident Evil 5, and then Resident Evil 5 obviously takes place after that, the parts with Spencer, but this is 30 years later, and you're watching video with him before stuff in 5. Yeah. It's a little... It can get a little convoluted. But yeah, the police station is mostly just used as a nostalgia bait location. I was hoping for something a little more like Snake returning to Shadow Moses like in Metal Gear Solid 4. Considering RPD was all over the advertising, but all we essentially got was 2 zombies and a tyrant chase. Come to think of it, this game is actually a lot like Metal Gear Solid 4 once you get to Leon. Snake's old, Leon's old, Snake has a slowly dying corridor part, Leon has a slowly dying corridor part. Snake has a fight against a franchise icon. Leon has a fight against a franchise icon. He's old Leon, or punished Leon. Though I'm sure the ladies and some guys would prefer naked Leon in Resident Evil Snake Eater. Oh god, why did I say that? Now, I know some people might say, well, what else were they supposed to do? I don't know. The entire city is still overrun, apparently. Make it a last stand major battle barricade type situation before the tyrant drops in. Again, it doesn't ruin anything for me. I was just disappointed by the lack of content in the Raccoon Police Department section compared to the rest of Leon's campaign. However, a cool thing about Leon's half is the return of iconic enemies like the giant spider and Lickers. And if you gave this game a bad score on Steam, the PlayStation Store, or Xbox because the spider boss scared you, I suggest you go to your nearest Walgreens and buy some adult diapers. It's a fucking horror game. What were you expecting? Thomas the Tank Engine? But yeah, returning enemies were done in a way that makes sense considering Umbrella is still operating to some capacity and shit's gonna mutate over time. All in all, this is probably my favorite Resident Evil since 2 Remake. As for the graphics and performance, like I was saying earlier, it looks and plays great. I'm on the PS5 and I didn't have a single stutter, no crashes, no slowdown, no pop-in. I mean, it ran flawless. That's the beauty, I guess, of RE Engine. Every game that runs on it, I've never had an issue with. I think it also has a lot to do with the dev teams knowing how to utilize the engine, unlike UE5. None of the Resident Evil games that run on it have these huge open worlds. They're smaller, more contained branching areas that allow for, honestly, better exploration than hunting a bunch of question marks on a bloated map. Sometimes a linear focused experience can be more fun than open world bloat. I know some people said they want to see an open world Resident Evil game based on the opening city section in Requiem, but to them I say, no. It only ran as well as it did because it wasn't open world. Plus Requiem barely hits like 50 gigs, I think, in storage space, and I don't want this series to turn into Call of Duty where the average game runs at 200 gigs install. That's just ridiculous. That's kind of going off topic. Overall, as a longtime fan, I give Requiem a definite buy. If I had to score it 9.5 out of 10, only because Leon's section could have just had a bit more to do, still, I'm on my second playthrough and loving the hell out of this game. If you love Resident Evil and haven't gotten this, why are you waiting? Buy it like yesterday. If this is your first Resident Evil and love it, welcome aboard. Now go buy the other games. Just avoid Umbrella Corps. And ignore the haters for 6. It's fine. Just expect to do lots of QuickTime events if you get it. There's an old internet joke that goes something like, in order to play Resident Evil 6, you have to mash on the buttons and wiggle the sticks. And Yeah, we're almost done with Leon's campaign, my wife and I, and it's totally true. But for Requiem, my final run time, I beat it in about 14 hours, taking my time. Resident Evil games are not known for their length, and that's fine. These games are meant for multiple playthroughs. The only thing I hope they bring back in a future DLC is Mercenaries mode. Not that its exclusion makes it less worthy of an entry, but after how fun that mode is in other games, it's noticeably missing here. Still, this game is well worth the asking price. And if Crimson Desert doesn't blow me away, it's probably already my game of the year. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see you on the next one.